Okay, hello, good morning. My name is Enis Natalia Caicedo Bonilla, and I am a student of the bachelor degree in teaching English. Today, I am here to talking about the step 5, reflecting on your experience for the course Research Pedagogical Practice. All right, the name of my research is Integration of Information and Communication Technologies in English Teaching, in change vocabulary acquisition to interactive activities. All right, now we are going to talking about the scenario where the practice were developed. I doing my practice with the Comunidad Virtual or virtual community in the University UNAT. And in this place, I have the opportunity to have a conversation with some different person for different semester. For example, I have a student for 1, 2, 3 semester, or the 7, 8, or 9 semester. They have some variation. Some characteristics of the students. One of them is they have a familiarity with ICT. They have interest in vocabulary acquisitions and activity participation in interactive activities. They know something about this ICT because in the university is normal to talk about that. This make more easy in the learning of a second language. For example, in the first, they have a good level of familiarity with information and communication technologies, which allow them to participate in interactive activities and use digital tools for learning. In another hands, they show a particular interest in improving their English vocabulary, recognize the importance of this aspect for the overall linguistic competence, and they are willing to actively participate in interactive activities involving reading, writing, and listening, talking, and they have some advantage of the dynamic learning opportunities and offered by the integration of ACT. The students have a better participation. They are awesome. In another hand, we have the adaptability of flexibility of the students, the positive attitude toward learning. For example, the students demonstrate the ability of adjust their methods and accept new teaching strategies based on the use of technology. And in general, they have a positive attitude toward learning English, especially when the activities are fun and engaging. We are increase their motivation and engagement. And these characteristics suggest that the students are well positioned to benefit from the integration of ICT in their English class, which can optimize their learning and make the educational process more effective and enjoyable. Because when you start to study some language, do you think that's fun? Because you're studying with interactive activity, and you have the opportunity to talk, to write, have a fun, or enjoy the class. You're gonna have a lot of vocabulary because they're gonna help you, because they gonna have a motivation for that part. All right, what is the objective of my research? Now I'm gonna talk about the general objective is to effectively integrate ICT into the English lesson with a virtual community for fostering um, engaged and enjoyable activities for the students to learn English vocabulary. I say that because it's common uh, with us, and when we was child, to have or learning English of the traditional method. For example, you are sitting in your class and you're only listen the teacher and only write. I think that's not help you. And maybe in some dramatical place, but it don't help a lot to have a better environment of the language because but in another hands when you use the technology you have the opportunity to have this experience because you gonna do the writing, the reading, writing, and listening of different ways. Maybe you can use the music, the histories, podcasts, some pictures, videos, and etc. Now, the specific objective. One of them are select appropriate ICT tools to design interactive and fun activities. And the second one, provide clear instructions of the use of ICT monitors student progress and adjust activities, in addition to fostering collaboration among students. Something I think is important, um, when you're gonna learn a second language, it's necessary to have um, a college because they're gonna do a collaborative work and that's gonna make more easy the learning process. Okay, now I'm gonna talk a little about the literature review. Just a sec. Okay, here. In the literature review, I use the ICT integration in the language learning. This is the use of digital tools to enhance education, especially in the virtual environment. For example, in this part, we use the Budiman of the year 2020, highlighting how technology from traditional audio tools to the modern computer-based learning, enrich learning, understanding, practice. This part, I think, these Budiman are talking about the listening. And in this part, they use the modern computer. Everybody have a computer or everybody have a phone. And this make more possibility to do some activities in the area of technology. And in other hand, we have the engaged reading activities. In this part, the engaged reading activity is stimulating their interest in the language learning. In this case, Goodyear emphasize in the using of media-centered programs, cognitive strategies, and building a knowledge base for continuous engagement. For example, something interesting I think they have in Guriat is the activities to stimulate interesting. For example, when you have the opportunity to read something, this is a word this is a big word, the literature or the reading, because you're gonna find some books about learning English or some book of adventure, some books of horror or romance, actions, and that um, maybe cap the attention of the students. For example, I like to read some books in English of take my attention. And I think if I like to read, I gonna share or find some information about what I like. For example, actions. I gonna writing or gonna buy a book or talking about that, and that gonna make more enjoyable to learning a new language. In another hand, we have the creative reading exercise. Creative reading exercise help students to express themselves and practice vocabulary. Mostly highlight their importance in skill development and offer effective pedagogical approach. In this part, mostly talk about the writing. The writing is so essential in the life of the students because the writing I think have various functions. In this case, the writing help you um, to to have more vocabulary and know the grammatical um, grammatical phrases or the organs, think about some verbs, and that's gonna make more easy the learning of the English or learning process of the idiom, all right? Language, sorry. In another hand, we have the interactive listening tasks and fun activities, fun and interactive ICT tools. For example, in the ICT tools, selecting interactive and effective ICT tool is crucial. In this case, Moderam from a British Council highlight the benefits of educational games, virtual reality simulations, and language learning apps. I think this part is so interesting because if you wanna say everybody have a phone. If you have a phone, you have internet. If you have internet, you have access of some information, right? In this case, some tools everybody knows is Duolingo. Duolingo is an app can help you to have a more vocabulary in some language. For example, if you have interest to learn English, you can use that because they're gonna have gonna teach you some vocabularies, right? Maybe if you know the language, you're gonna think that is boring, but this is this is a big opportunity to the initial uh, phase of the learning a language, right? And another app we can use, for example, is Kahoot. Kahoot is a very versatile app or online app or page. I think they gonna help you. For example, if you are a teacher, you can use this because you can do some activities for the students. I think it's very fun because it's a different tools. In another hand, we have the listening tags. For example, interactive listening, use the audio recording, podcast, with the comprehension questions and vocabulary exercise. Book and LAM discuss listening skills are developing interactive tags. Um, learn some language with the listening is so important because in this case, you're gonna have a more ear for the language, and you can use, we read here audios, podcasts, and music. If you like to listen to music in a special language, you can use, for example, if you want to learn some language, for example, French. You can find some music in that language and you maybe gonna like. You can find some podcasts talking about some interesting ways and etc. This is a better exercise, an essential exercise in the learning process. All right, now the process, the planning and tool selections. I use various digital tools were chosen based on the potential to facilitate interactive and engaged learning experience. These include educational apps, online learning platforms, multimedia, browsing, and collaborative tools. In another hand, we have the implementation interactive reading activities. I use, or maybe you can use some books, online articles. We design activities that includes highlights, new vocabulary, and using digital glossaries and interactive quiz. The creative or writing exercise. For example, in this part, the student engaged in the creative writing tasks using online platforms, assignment including writing short stories, essay, told like Quizlets, and etc. An interactive listening task. For example, in my case, I like to use some tasks because listening tasks using podcasts because in the podcast you can find information about the history, culture, news. fake news or something like that, and you think gonna cap your attention. And that help the student because you have something in common. Do you know what is interesting for within? You're gonna do a good activity. All right. Now follow up. We use in these my practicas, in my pedagogical practice, it's so necessary to have the progress monitoring because in this case you're gonna do or you're gonna know the student progress was is monitoring learning management. For example, you can use analyticals or participation and performance. You can do a periodic assignment, help measure vocabulary acquisition and rotation. And that have a monitoring is necessary because in this form, you're gonna know what the students know or what they don't know and how can you help you? Oh, sorry, how can you help them in some difficult in the language? It's important too to have a feedback because the feedback was provided so the uh, those you can personalize the comments, you can have some suggestions from improvement. All right. The evaluation data collections. In this part is so essential because the data we collect through a variety of means, including file journals, we can have this data with the file journals, observation, test scores, and student participation in different activities. These data provide a quantitative and qualitative information on the student progress and effective of the activities. For example, in this case, you're gonna know if the students understand you when you have the class or no. And this data collect was analyzed and you can do a evaluation set of the ICT if you can use. For example, my results. Uh, in my case, the student have an improved vocabulary acquisition, positive shift attitude, effective use of ICT tools, and development of additional skills. And the students showed significant improvement of the vocabulary knowledge. They have that opportunity with that with the technology. And in another hand, we have a good surveys indicating a positive shift of the students' attitude toward the learning English. And we use the instrumental and delivering engaged vocabulary exercise with the ICT tools the students like. The develop of additional skills, the student demonstrate uh, they can improve in the reading comprehensions, writing, and literature skills. In conclusion, the integration of the ICT in the English language teachings, through careful and stage activity, a significant improvement in student engagement and vocabulary acquisition. I think in conclusion, my practice are good. Maybe I can do better in another opportunity, but I think in this case, in this moment, I know what is necessary to the students. In another moment, I gonna have that in account and I gonna do better. For example, in conclusion, I know some students have some difficulties in some area, for example, maybe in the listening, or some students have difficulties in the writing, or some students, okay, have difficulty in some part. And taking in account that, I'm gonna do a better plan, a better strategy for the learning process of my students. Okay, I think that's all. Thanks so much to be here and have a good day.